At a time when young journalists are in many ways reinventing the craft and finding new ways to engage audiences in new media, it's also good to remember that imagining and reimagining oneself and one's career is something of a time-honored tradition in this field. Barbara is a very good example. Consider this. She started out in college studying chemistry, ended up majoring in physics, earned her PhD in cell biology. I think it's safe to say that even she could not have foreseen the many adventures her life and career have witnessed since then. We are very grateful that she's accepted the students' invitation to be with us today as commencement speaker.
Thank you, Neil, and congratulations on becoming the real and permanent dean. Thanks to having the smartest students and the most congenial faculty in the world. Including on the faculty, I just want to mention one person, one of my best and oldest friends, Deirdre English. You can now applaud for Deirdre, who is one of the most dedicated and innovative teachers you'll find anywhere. Now, Deirdre and Neil gave me some very strict instructions about what I was to say here today. They said, 1, no whining, no crying at the podium. No wringing of hands or gnashing of teeth. 2, do not be depressing. Be upbeat, optimistic. And of course, it wouldn't hurt to throw in a few tips about how to apply for food stamps. So let us get the worst of it out of the way, and other people have referred to this before, but let's get it out of the way right up front. You are going to be trying to carve out a career in the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. You are furthermore going to be trying to do so within a dying industry, or at least an industry going through such profound restructuring, it's almost unrecognizable to old-timers like me. You have abundant skills and talents and energy. It's not all that sure that anybody wants to pay for them. Well, you are not alone. How do you think it feels to be a laid-off auto worker right now? And I've spent a lot of time recently with laid-off paper mill workers in Maine, construction workers all over the country, and miners in my hometown, Butte, Montana. They've got skills, they've got experience, they just don't have jobs. Or for someone at a similar level of education, take the case of my nephew. He had sort of lost the family for decades. I reconnected with him when he was in his 30s, driving a delivery truck in Minneapolis. Well, with the royalties from my book, Nickel and Dimed, I was able to put him through college and to get a master's degree, like you have. And he wanted it to be in some kind of computer science. I can't even recall exactly what kind it was. It was the biggest opportunity of his life. I was proud to help him. What did it lead to? Short-term contract work at $12 an hour. So let me be the first to say this to you. And I want this to be, you understand this is one of the best things I'm going to say, as well as the worst. But welcome to the American working class. That's where you are. That's what you come to. You won't get rich unless you develop a sideline in blackmail, which I'm not discouraging. You will even get to live some of the problems you report on without having to go through any kind of submersion journalism stuff. For example, the struggle for health insurance, the struggle for child care, for affordable housing. You may never have a cleaning lady. In fact, you might be one. I'm not kidding. I can't tell you how many writers I've known who moonlighted as janitors and as, quote, cleaning ladies or waitresses. And you know what? They're good writers. And what's more, and this is no small thing, they're good cleaning ladies. Now, let me just say a little bit about what's been happening with me, my own career, not because I'm representative or exemplary in any way, but I've seen, as Paul mentioned, some real changes in this business over time. I didn't start out, as Neil said, as a journalist, but it was what I eventually discovered after all the science and everything that I really loved doing, research and writing about issues I really cared about. So we flash back to 1980. I was a single mother of 2. Small children. My boyfriend was a warehouse worker at $4.50 an hour. He did rise soon to become a union organizer. And my work quota was 4 articles or columns a month. This is to pay the rent. I wrote for Ms. and Mother Jones, which I loved doing, and also for places, most of them now defunct, like Mademoiselle, Lear's, New York Woman, which I did not quite, love quite so much. There was no time for writer's block in this life. The kids got off to school at about 8:30 in the morning. I had to work. I had until about 3 p.m. to work. I did my research at the public library. We didn't have the internet yet. The kids did not get any kind of special lessons or SAT prep courses when the time came. By the way, they turned out to be absolutely wonderful and amazing, and one of them is a freelance journalist. Then came the fat times in the 1990s. And I didn't know it then, but these were a real anomaly in the history of journalism. The whole industry was booming, I thought anyway. My own reputation was beginning to take hold a little bit. Editors would take me out for 3-course lunches in Manhattan. What a treat when you're a freelance writer. I'll never forget one of those lunches. It was with the top editor. I guess enough time has passed so I can say it now. Now it was Esquire magazine. And I was trying to pitch him a story on poverty. And I had an interesting angle and all that. I'd worked it out. Anyway, in those days, editors and a lot of top writers did not spend much time among the poor, nor did they notice who was delivering their FedEx package to them or cleaning their office at night or anything like that. So this editor, he looked increasingly bored as we worked our way through the field greens with goat cheese and the tuna carpaccio, whatever it was, and so forth, until we got to the death by chocolate dessert. And then he finally said, "Okay, Barbara, do your thing on poverty, but make it upscale." So that was a trick anyway. It was an uphill, struggle to write what I wanted to write. But after a while, I didn't have to write any more articles for the women's magazines on, quote, the man shortage or the, quote, heartbreak diet or something. I could make $10 a word writing for Time magazine. That was my biggest gig of all time for me. $10 a word. Most Americans today would be happy to get $10 an hour. Publishing companies began to woo me, and when editors took me out for lunch, I no longer had to bring along a plastic baggie to put the rolls in. That's how I could manage to secrete them. Then, of course, it all began to fall apart. The news weeklies. Time fired me in '97. I made a swift upward leap to writing columns for the Progressive magazine. The book publishing industry was in tatters by the middle of this decade. And then the newspaper started to shrink within my hands. You notice how that happened? And actually disappear. I know so many people who have had to take buyouts, if they're lucky, get buyouts, from the Washington Post, the LA Times, the Chicago Tribune, and now, of course, it'll be the Chronicle, too. I was beginning, we were all beginning to feel a certain kinship with blacksmiths and elevator operators. When the recession hit, even me, in 2008, and every single income stream I had dried up, suddenly, like that. But it was the recession that saved me from self-pity. I began to get sick and tired of the typical New York Times recession story. You've all read them. There's the one about, the person in the Manhattan who's had to cut back the number of hours she can see her personal trainer every week because her income has gotten so low. There was the poor teenager in somewhere in New Jersey whose $100 a week allowance was just cut down. This was what the coverage has been. All right, I realize that those are man-bite-dog stories compared to the story of the laid-off roofer who has just been evicted from his trailer home or something. But it seemed to me, after a while, that the recession had absolutely eliminated the poor and the working class from the media consciousness. Completely. They disappeared. Then I got this email, which kind of clarified everything for me. I mean, people have been talking about their moments of transition here as students. This is not that many weeks ago. My aforementioned nephew emailed me and said that his mother-in-law, a 55-year-old woman who's been living with and supporting her disabled daughter and 2 grandchildren on 3 part-time jobs, got sick, which you do on 3 part-time jobs, fell behind on her mortgage and had gotten her 3rd foreclosure notice. Of course, I sent money, but I also said, one condition: I want to talk to this woman. I want to meet her. I want to know the story. Because I realize this is the great untold story of the recession that we're going through now. The story of what's happening to those who are already in a recession, or really a depression of their own for years and years. So a couple of weeks ago, I got up my nerve and I pitched the New York Times, or what's left of it, a series of reported essays on this topic. They took it. I shamed them a little. But here's the catch. At only 1/4 of the pay that I got writing columns for them 5 years ago. That bothered me, and not just because I like, to make money and so on, but it also bothered me because I'm thinking of you. If they can do this to me after paying me so much before, what are they going to do to the new people and people like my own son? But then I gradually realized, and it was sort of an epiphany, this is what I do. I'm on a mission. You can't stop me. I'm going to do this. And it occurred to me, anyway, why should I earn so much more money than the people I intend to write about? A harsh wake-up. But this brings me back to the subject of journalism as a profession. We are not part of an elite. I think there was a moment there in the 90s when we might have thought we were. We are not akin to movie stars, anchor persons, hedge fund managers. We should not hang out with them either. We are part of the American working class, which is exactly, as Paul Grabowitz reminded us, how journalists saw themselves for so many years, in the 20th century, as working stiffs, not as someone special. We can be underpaid, especially if we have no union. We can be jerked around. We can be laid off arbitrarily, just like any auto worker or mechanic or flight attendant. But there is this one difference, big difference. A laid-off auto worker doesn't go into his or her garage and assemble cars by hand to keep busy. But we, journalists, can't stop doing what we know how to do. As long as there's a story to be told, an injustice to be exposed, a mystery to be solved, we will find a way to do it. And what is special about you compared to people of my generation is that you possess so many new skills, so many multiple skills, so I know you can invent and create new ways to do it. A recession will not stop us. A dying industry won't stop us. Even poverty won't stop us, because we are all on a mission here. This, I think, is what is the meaning of your Berkeley degree. Do not consider it a certificate promising some sort of entitlement. Consider it a license to fight. Consider this day to be your induction into a kind of knighthood or a kind of samurai brotherhood or sisterhood. You are not civilians anymore. You are part of the worldwide fight for truth and justice. And I mean it, corny as it sounds, absolutely. In the 70s, they talked about gonzo journalism. What faces us today is guerrilla journalism, and we will not be stopped. Thank you.
That was simply brilliant. If there are 3 phrases perhaps we can take away so far from the proceedings, I will remember the best life ever, get the boy his peaches, and the license to fight. It's really good stuff.